I'm Master Saturn. Thank you for joining me for another BDSM Horror Story podcast. Our podcast is really named BDSM United, but right now we're going through some of the different horror stories, trying to give you some advice on how to not have a horror story of your own. It's kind of a chilly morning here in my part of the planet, and I have a warm cup of coffee, and I know something else that will warm us up is some of these really, really bad sex stories. Obviously, I'm going to be quoting other people and their experiences, so some of it won't match my gender and my voice. So just note that. But the first one is a woman telling a story that is pretty bad. She says, I met some guy at a party and I ended up going to his house. Mid thrust, he started laughing manically and yelled, I am fucking an alien princess. I am fucking an alien princess. I, far too sober, immediately stopped and then had to listen to him say, with wide eyes, your vagina looks like the fridge scene in Ghostbusters. I fell asleep and I woke up in the morning to him eating a whole key lime pie in bed, not even looking over at me. He said, you can't have any. So I walked home. This is a really crazy story. Some of the people that we meet in life will just be crazy and just do crazy shit, or maybe be on stuff that causes them to start tripping out at the most inappropriate times. And this is where vetting is really important. We say that a lot, but really, if you meet some random person and you hook up with them, it's fine, but you never know what you're going to get. And thankfully, she didn't get murdered. Uh, Thankfully, this guy wasn't a psycho in that way. He was just having some kind of psychotic break of some kind in the moment. Here's another one, a one from a gentleman, and this is a total ouchie here. While riding me cowgirl, an ex bounced up too high. I partially slid out. She came back down, and my penis kinked in the middle, to the left. I could feel the snap echo through my entire body. I could only imagine. Horrible screams. A shame. It was pretty funny up until that point, or pretty fun. I stayed like that for nearly a year when one day it miraculously straightened itself. You definitely don't want to break your dick. So you got to be careful. The heat of the moment, things can get kind of crazy, and you just got to try to be as safe as you can. But sometimes injuries are going to happen, and we've noted that in one of our past podcasts in this little mini series that somebody is going to inevitably. A lot of people, the longer you stay in it, you're going to encounter some kind of injury, some kind of accident. Hopefully you don't break your dick or break some guy's dick. That's just got to feel awful for both people involved. Here's one from somebody recounting a time when they were young. They said, my first boyfriend had talked me into giving him a blowjob. His and my first one. After some hesitation, I began, and everything seemed to be going as he described it would be. Halfway through, though, I noticed my chest felt really warm and damp. I looked down, and to my horror, there was an indescribable amount of diarrhea covering my white shirt. To this day, I'm not sure what happened. Of course, the really fun part was when I had to lift my shirt over my head to get it off. Ugh. Well, there's a reason why the scat is not, it tends to jump onto people's limitless, oftentimes because it is, something that they personally find distasteful. Can totally understand that. Can totally get behind that No pun intended. Yeah, but when you're doing new things and trying new things, you really need to communicate, especially if you, I mean, if you're getting a blowjob from a girl and, or from a guy or from anyone, if you're getting a blowjob and you start to feel your bowels move, you need to communicate something. Stop them. It's okay. Let them, tell them, okay, you're doing just fine. You need to stop, but my body is reacting in this negative way. Or if you think that that's something that always happens to you, then you definitely want to try to get the consent of the person before you inject a scat scene into their life. They may not want that. Here's another real life encounter here. It was the first time I had sex with this guy, and he was hitting it from behind on his big brass bed. At one point, I was getting tired, so I went to turn my head to make eye contact. I had read that made guys crazy, and I realized that my head was stuck between the brass posts. I was like a kid in a banister and kept imagining firemen having to save me. My date sure couldn't save me. He, in fact, laughed so hard that he peed on the floor. Things are going to happen. Accidents are going to happen. Equipment is going to malfunction. So you have to make accommodation for that. You have to know what to do, or be quick on your feet to know what to do. Laughing so hard that you pee on the floor is probably not an appropriate response. You definitely need to have some empathy for somebody who's in a situation that is horrible for them. Sure, you can giggle a little bit later, hopefully together, maybe with some aftercare, you can giggle together. But in the heat of the moment, laughing so hard and not helping appropriately, you know, can be horrible for somebody. They're already somewhat embarrassed. And so embarrassing them further is not going to be good for your relationship. Here's somebody who talks about a whole buffet of terribleness, like one thing after another. She said, the first and last time I had sex with this guy, he managed to go wrong on just about every level. 5 minutes in, he was sweating so much that he had to stop to ask me for a towel. The room wasn't hot, and it definitely wasn't a strenuous 5 minutes. The dirty talk came in full sentences. Each one had a subject and a predicate, such as, "You're my sexy little socialist." He was a Republican and I'm not. Definitely not the venue for political discourse of any kind, let alone when said during one of the many times that he stopped fucking so he could stare into my eyes. No joke, at least a dozen times he pulled back to give me this puppy dog face because somehow during this encounter he decided that we were soulmates. Also, he kept going soft, which wouldn't have been so awful if he didn't stop to blame the condom in a manner of some kind of half-hearted stand-up comic. What, are these condoms made out of lead or something? Extra obnoxious was when it followed by, "I love how good it feels inside you." He not only tried to jackhammer during our inaugural romp, but he actually tried to force the mattress to spring him up. All this did was result in a really uncomfortable series of thrusts where his rhythm didn't match the mattress and his cock just stabbed me a few times. He kissed fine outside of bed, but once in bed, the kissing was relegated to tiny pecks in rapid succession with his eyes open. She says that she has large breasts, which he often claimed to be a fan of. But while she was expecting some decent groping, she had no such luck. Instead, the quality of love and attention was that her breasts were delicately patted with an open hand. During sex, he actually apologized for being inappropriate. When she had exhausted every other trick in her book and this still wasn't over, she asked him to bend over, or sorry, to bend her over so she'd feel more comfortable being objectified and wouldn't have to see his face. She went to position with her hand to position and guide him into place. And after a couple minutes, realized that he hadn't made contact up inside of her, despite all of his talking. It wasn't until she moved her hand away that he made a joke about falling out. And she realized that he didn't know that he had been fucking her hand instead of her the whole time. Oh, that's just one after another. Just, in the vetting process, we ask people for what their level of experience is. And when hopefully they tell you the truth, and hopefully you can tell between the bullshit. You can tell whether they're being sincere or whether they're just wildly overconfident and then are saying things that may not make sense. A lot of times people will tell on themselves when you ask about rope safety, and they talk about how they once had somebody tied up all day long and went to the store and came back or something. They'll tell on you their own lack of experience with you. And they'll tell on themselves. That's what I meant to say. And so in the vetting process, hopefully you can see through the bullshit, because everyone's trying to make a good impression. And so sometimes people will stretch the truth, and hopefully you can see through that farce, and you can, read between the lines and get to some knowledge of what their experience level actually is. And if it's really not good, don't leave them in control. Don't, when you're in first encounters with someone, you shouldn't be submitting if you're submissive. And if you're in first encounters with someone, you shouldn't be dominating them if you're not, if you're dominant. If first encounters are somewhat experimental, and you move into power exchange and you move into those things, a little down the road. So you should, the experienced person should help the inexperienced person out, and should be able to communicate, should be able to clearly communicate what you do and don't want. When something inappropriate starts to happen, maybe you stop the scene, you throw up a yellow, you stop the scene temporarily, and you fix some of these issues. Be like, okay, this isn't working. Let's try something different. Or this isn't working this time. I'm seeing that there may be some compatibility. If you're really horny, you can masturbate in front of each other to finish it, to finish the scene, to finish off. And, a couple little obligatory cuddles, and some goodbyes, maybe a stiff drink, and hey, that was nice. I'm doing fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're both fine. And just let it be. Let it go. Let me see what I'm doing for time here. All right, let me share just one more, and let me see. No, you know what? I'm going to save this one more for next time. This one is obnoxious and horrible, a horrible thing happening to somebody, and you'll just have to wait until our next podcast to hear it. Sorry, not sorry. I'm Master Saturn. Thank you for joining me for this BDSM United podcast, where we shared some of the BDSM and today's sex horror stories, some of the things that happen to real people in real life, trying to give you advice about how to not have your own BDSM horror story happen. You can find all of our resources at bdsmunited.com. You can also find our Not Safe for Work, totally uncensored social network of our own at mastersaturn.com, where you can see the things that we'd really like to post on Facebook and everywhere else, but we can't because then we would get either demonetized or we would get banned or sent to Facebook jail. Well, we were tired of being censored, so we created our own space on the internet. It was a joy speaking with you today, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.